So a quick thank you to our sponsor, Careerist, before we dive into today's episode. Because not everyone wants to spend their time learning how to code to get that elusive career in tech. And with Careerist QA Bootcamp, you don't have to. In just 4 months, you can have live training, a remote internship, and a career coaching that sets you up for success. Because in a world of job layoffs, QA is one of the fastest growing fields in tech. And there are currently 37,000 openings in the US right now, and with salaries up to $105,000. And Careerist grads, they're working at companies in 42 states, and with a very highly respectable 4.7 star Trustpilot rating, I think it's clear the model seems to work. And remember, if you don't land a job within a year, you get your tuition fees back. So what's the catch? Well, the only catch really is that the seats for the next class won't last. So you'll find the link in the show notes. Check it out. Let me know how you get on. Maybe I can get you on the podcast when you get that career in tech and tell me about your journey. But now it's time to get straight into the discussion with my guest today. What happens when the pace of technological change moves faster than most workplaces can handle? And how do you keep your team ahead of the curve without leaving anyone behind? Well, my guest today is the CEO of Pluralsight, a platform that is currently trusted by Fortune 500s to power upskilling at scale. Her name's Erin Gajdalo, and she has a sharp perspective on how AI is already reshaping work, not just for developers and data scientists, but everyone, from HR to finance to frontline teams. So today we're going to go beyond the hype to talk real-world transformation, why some companies might be falling behind, and why others are saving thousands of hours with Gen AI, and what it actually takes to lead through this change. And she'll also share her thoughts on AI stigma, how to get ROI from experimentation, and why continuous learning is now a competitive advantage, not just a perk. But enough from me. Allow me to officially introduce you to Erin right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Erin. For everyone listening, can you tell them a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, Neil. It's great to be here. My name is Erin Gajdalo, and I'm the CEO of Pluralsight. Pluralsight's an online educational platform that focuses on enabling upskilling in the areas of technology. So just to give you a little background on us, we have a really rich history of working with many Fortune 500 companies. And as a part of our relationship with them, we partner in order to provide them with tech training as a way to deliver on their strategy and ultimately to leverage their number one asset, which is their people. The organization was founded over 20 years ago. We started in the classroom doing technology training, and since it's transformed into an online platform where we offer not only expert-led content, but hands-on experiences such as labs and sandboxes where learners can really practice and illustrate their proficiency and their tech skills. And in addition to that, we offer a whole host of administrative tools that leaders can use to enable technology upskilling at scale, whether that's across a specific department or across their entire company.
And I would imagine this is an incredibly exciting space at the moment as a workforce development company that's helping individuals and organizations transform with tech skills, etc. It's a big talking point, isn't it? And it's needed now more than ever.
Absolutely. The pace of change with technology is really incredible. And so the need to not only upskill, but to reskill is a continued cycle that's becoming even more critical to stay up to the same pace of the technology change and also remain relevant.
And the reason I bring that up, of course, is because of AI. Over the last 5 years, we've seen AI, we've seen agentic AI, agents. It's only going to continue. It's impacting every industry, every workplace. But there's a lot of hype around it. And there's also a lot of people struggling to find ROI and value and get projects out of pilot phase. So I'm curious, how do you use AI in your own work? And how has AI maybe changed the way you work as CEO? And anything you can share around that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I do love to roll up my sleeves and just try and test some of this technology as it's released. For me, day to day, I spend most of the time in my role really problem solving and communicating. So I'd say the majority of the use cases that I'm focused on are simply for things like drafting presentations. I use it to analyze massive amounts of data, frankly, in some cases where I might be taking a little bit of a shortcut and need to understand what the insights are quicker. It's really helpful in doing that, as well as performing quick research. That said, leading Pluralsight, we're also in the midst of a massive business transformation like many companies today. And so to that end, we're also looking company wide to leverage AI in ways that enable us to be able to operate more efficiency or effectively and to go faster. So as an example of that, we're currently in the midst of a sprint that we're doing across the company where we're asking every department to be able to roll up their sleeves and test these new AI technologies. And in the coming weeks, we're going to come together and pitch the best ideas from departments to determine what we'll prioritize as an organization. In addition to that, I would say AI is also influencing the mindset of executives to lead through this massive amount of change. And so for us, about a year ago, we committed to making a pretty massive investment into our product platform that is really aimed at driving scale and innovation along our product roadmap. But as you can imagine, since we originally set out that plan last year, technology has dramatically evolved. And frankly, it's in our best interest to constantly look at new ways to drive towards these outcomes by leveraging AI, which in many cases is very different than the original plan we had in place. And so I would say, just summarizing overall, it's really about getting in, using it hands-on, identifying ways across the company that you can leverage talent across the company to try out these new solutions and be really nimble in your mindset because it is changing so quickly and it's beneficial to go back and reassess some original plans that you might have already had in place to be able to move the business forward.
And a few moments ago, you mentioned the word shortcut there, and it reminds me, I was chatting with a guest recently about schools and businesses banning AI, and he was saying that, Neil, I don't want someone that's very proud of the fact that it's just took them 8 hours to complete a task when there was a more efficient way of working. I don't want that person. So I'm curious, how do you respond to people who see AI as just a way of taking shortcuts? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. And we actually, here at Pluralsight, we do a significant amount of research on what's happening in technology. And we did an AI skills report this year. And it was funny because a part of that report, 61% of respondents said that their organizations viewed using Gen AI as lazy. However, at the same time, what we're also seeing is organizations that buy into that stigma are ultimately ending up creating even more risk for their business because 2/3 of people are using the solutions regardless, even though they might not admit it. And so this opens up organizations to shadow AI that can create even more risk. Think of things like security vulnerabilities and compliance challenges if you don't have a set of standards and practices in place that are addressing these technology solutions. So it's definitely an interesting conundrum. And my perspective is you should lean in as opposed to avoiding it completely.
Yeah, I completely agree. It just feels sometimes that we've all almost been through the 5 stages of the Kubler-Ross change curve model. You know, we start in denial and anger and bargaining, depression, but then we come around to acceptance and adoption, etc. And despite this, though, I mean, we are, 3 years into since everything went viral with the arrival of ChatGPT. AI still holds a stigma in many workplaces. Why do you think that still is?
Yeah, I mean, Neil, you said it perfectly. And I think it's really comes down to the fear of the unknown. And for individuals, most of the concern comes from a place of self-preservation. As you think about it, not a week goes by where we don't hear of some major organization eliminating roles due to the adoption of AI and the efficiency that it's creating across businesses. There's also organizations that have been really open and have spoken about this prove it mentality, which is essentially that you need to prove that jobs can't be done with AI before a role can even be opened within the organization. At the same time, while this fear exists, the data also shows that executives and tech professionals unanimously agree that acquiring AI skills is the best way to ensure job security. And so that's just for the individual. Then you start to break it down for organizations and some of their concerns. Most of the things that they're fearful of is around the risks that these technologies can create when common guidelines or training doesn't exist across the business. So with that said, what I can assure you is that whether you're an employee or an employer, ignoring AI is not the right answer. If you want to stay competitive and manage your risk as well as future-proof your skills, you must continue to learn and you must continue to lean into AI.
And I think when it comes to introducing new tech into the workplace, we've been here many, many times before. First of all, it's all about getting it in there, getting that exciting tech, and there's a bit of resistance because if you don't look after the culture side first and ensuring people are ready for this kind of change, that's when you typically run into problems. So I guess the question I've got to ask is what can leaders do to change their culture and encourage transparency in its AI use and ensuring people are along for the ride and not getting left behind?
Yeah, so to me, it is actually pretty simple. It's enabling access to AI tools, creating clear guidelines that minimize the risk, while also encouraging a test and learn mindset. And I'm a big believer in using failure as an opportunity to learn. And the best way to deliver big outcomes using these solutions is to remove the fear of failure or the stigma associated with using these tools and instead encouraging everyone in the organization to explore. And lastly, but certainly not least, is all about the education. So this is not just for engineers. This is truly for everyone. And education should be provided for everyone in the organization. There are incredible AI use cases that are presenting themselves daily across every discipline. And so it's really important that all employees have a baseline knowledge of how to use these tools, understand how to apply them in your business, as well as understand the associated risks with using them.
And to bring that to life, and apologies, but I'm going to put you on the spot here, but can you share an example of something that you've done that's worked around this, just to help people listening? Oh, okay, I get it, and how it might help them move forward too.
Yeah. So as an example, we partner with several organizations and working with them to be able to upskill all of their employees. And so a great example of this is a financial services and data analytics organization. And as you can imagine, an organization like theirs is a ton of compliance and guidelines that they have to follow. But it really starts with being able to create a baseline understanding of the skill sets that you have across the organization, measuring those skills, and then being able to provide the solutions, whether it's content itself or some other hands-on learning that enables people to grow their skills, and then being able to measure them after the fact. And what we've seen in this particular organization is that using this type of prescriptive training, specifically around Gen AI, they were able to increase their prompt engineering efficiency by 20% and save them almost 1,600 hours over a period of 3 months. So it's pretty incredible.
And I think we've all seen the horror stories in our news feeds because, hey, bad news gets more clicks. And that's the reason that there's so many of them out there. And I always encourage anyone listening, if you are intimidated or you're curious about how it works, just have a play with it. You can play with the free model very easily and get an understanding of how it works. But what do you think's holding employees back from openly embracing AI? And is it right across all ages or is it certain ages are impacted more than others, would you say?
Yeah, so outside of the items that I just mentioned, such as access to tools, proper education, and a clear set of guidelines, the other thing I would say is really common and that employees need in order to embrace these tools is leadership that also embraces AI. We've seen so many incredible use cases across our organization, but at the same time, it sits within pockets of these organizations, and only certain organizations are actually leaning in and adopting. So I think there's this huge divide between the organizations that are being successful using those tools versus the ones that frankly are sitting back and adopting a wait and see mentality. There is no in between at this point because many organizations are still just trying to figure out how to go about doing that. And so what I would say is for those that are continuing to struggle, it's all about leadership showing up, declaring it as a priority, and giving employees the flexibility and the freedom to go try these things out, and knowing that you might not have a clear ROI coming out of some of these tests that you might be doing. And that's okay because the process has to be about learning.
And from an organizational point of view, the other big talking point right now is ethical use of AI. So as CEO of Pluralsight, how do you balance encouraging AI use and encouraging that adoption while making sure it's also used responsibly?
Yeah. So AI is a great tool, and it provides a ton of opportunity to be more efficient and more effective, especially when you look at things like standard or repetitive processes. However, it is important that people understand that it should also be looked at as an assistant and not a replacement for things like critical thinking and creativity. It can provide hallucinations or bad information. And the best way to combat these issues is through that education and awareness that we've been discussing. And so organizations that are spending time partnering with credible training solutions or creating training solutions themselves that offers safe and secure hands-on environments where learners can experiment safely and make mistakes without putting more risk on the business is really what is going to drive responsible usage.
And when doing a little research before you joined me on the podcast today, I came across your recent report. And one of the things that stood out to me there was how you found that many employees pretend to know more about AI than they actually do. And arguably, I've seen AI do exactly the same thing in some of the responses. But how do you close the gap between confidence and competence?
Yeah, it's all about data and organizational commitment. So what I have seen work incredibly well is to first leverage assessment tools to understand the gaps in the knowledge base and then create extremely prescriptive approaches to learning. The organizations that do this best are those that continue to invest in learning or upskilling. Most of these organizations have central learning and development teams that partner with their technology organizations to systematically baseline skills and provide experiences that enable skills acquisition and ultimately measure proficiency. They then take these skills and pair them with tasks and ultimately get them back to delivering against business outcomes, and being able to have that entire value stream and measurement is incredibly important. And when it's done well, that's when you really start to see the value of upskilling.
And I think one of the many fears from workers that I've seen over the years is that they often feel that they're not invested in, they're not given the adequate training, they feel in danger of being left behind. There comes the fear and the anger, etc. So what role would you say upskilling plays in making feel more confident about the change and the tide that you just can't swim against now?
Right. Well, I spoke a little bit earlier about the pace of technology change and how that's continuing to increase, with AI being a critical driver of that. You can look at all the research that's out there. As a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum in their 2025 jobs report indicated that 2/5 of existing skills will be transformed or be outdated by the year 2030. That's an incredible number. So what this means for employees is that you need to constantly be developing your skills, upskilling and reskilling. If you just look at the US manufacturing industry as an example, we're continuing to struggle to find the tech talent that's needed after so many years of offshoring, because modern manufacturing expects employees now to know how to interpret and analyze data, make data-driven decisions, and in some cases, actually understand the basic principles of machine learning. And then, of course, there's employers, and this means offering learning opportunities and solutions that enable your employees to stay on the cutting edge. Those employers that don't adopt AI or are not offering any sort of training or support are going to be less attractive to employees in the future and are going to struggle to stay on the cutting edge of technology overall.
Fantastic. And if I did ask you to dare to look into the future, into my virtual crystal ball, where do you see AI's role in the workplace heading over the next few years? And what skills do you think will be most important for workers in that future? I'm hearing more and more it's less technical and more soft skills and interpersonal skills. But what are you seeing here?
Yes, I would absolutely agree. Soft skills are going to be critical, but what I believe is the most important is the willingness and commitment to ongoing learning.
Yeah.
It used to be that you went to college, you got a job, you stayed in that job for 20, 30 years based off of what you studied, and then you ultimately retired. That is not the case. Nowadays, the pace of change is so rapid that in order to stay relevant, your skills must always be continuing to evolve, and you must be willing to learn and frankly, open yourself up to new ways of solving tomorrow's problems.
Fantastic advice. And thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today and share your insights and also shine a light on this topic that I think influences every single person that is listening wherever they are in the world. Now, as a thank you to you, I'm going to see if there's something we can do for you now, because some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or might even listen to this podcast. Maybe there's a friend of a friend out there listening that might be able to play the role of connectors. So is there a person that you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with? Who would it be and why? And he or she might just hear this, but who would it be? Let's see what we can manifest.
Yeah, I love this question. And there's some pretty obvious names in the tech world, but frankly, the one person I'm most interested in connecting with is Serena Williams. She's obviously had an incredible tennis career, but what interests me the most is the work that she's doing with Serena Ventures, which is her VC firm. She's spending a lot of time investing in companies that were founded by women or underrepresented groups, many of which are tech companies. And as you can imagine, this really hits home with me as a female CEO. It's estimated that less than 5% of PE and VC-backed companies have women as their CEO. So needless to say, the work that she's doing during this transformative period of her career is truly inspiring to me. So I'd love to spend time with her.
Wow, what an incredible answer. Absolutely love that. We'll throw that out into the universe. If you are a friend of a friend of a friend of Serena, please, this is your call to action. Please see if we can make something happen there. And for everyone listening wanting to find out more information about Pluralsight, where's the best place for listeners to find you, your team online, or just find out more about anything we discussed?
Yep. So you can find us at pluralsight.com. And if you're interested in any of the resources or the data that I referenced today, we have a ton of research that's available to you if you go to pluralsight.com/resources.
Well, I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And I just love how you're inspiring and empowering tech workforces to achieve their goals and help them upskill and making sure that nobody gets left behind. Everyone comes along for the ride. Incredible work. Love what you're doing and everything you stand for here. And all we need to do now is see if we can get you that lunch date with Serena Williams. But thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Neil. I appreciate the time.
So if you're still thinking AI is just for tech teams, I'm hoping that Erin might have just changed your mind. From boosting prompt engineering efficiency to showing how leadership can shape AI adoption. For me, my conversation with Erin today was packed with so many insights and a few honest reflections on what it's like leading through uncertainty. And as Erin reminded us there, upskilling isn't just a strategy. It's a survival. The question is, are your teams ready? And what role are you going to be taking in ensuring that they are ready? So now it's your turn. How is your organisation navigating the AI learning curve? And are you investing in real education or just waiting to see what happens? Let me know. And remember, if you do happen to be 1 degree of separation away from Serena Williams, well, you know who to call, and it isn't Ghostbusters. So please make something happen there and let me know. Techblogwriteroutlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another guest. Bye for now.